Hey everyone, I'm Tony Marinera, obviously, and I just wanted to say thank you for either checking out the video or listening on Spotify. I obviously appreciate it no matter how you're checking this out, but I just wanted to put this at the beginning of the first few episodes to just say I've never done something like this before, and because of that, that means there's going to be either audio issues or, video issues and anything like that. And things might not always be 100% in these first few episodes, but I hope you enjoy what I've put out so far. And obviously, as time grows on, I'll learn and grow, and I have some fun things in store that I'd like to try. So hopefully you enjoy what you hear in these first few episodes, and as time goes on, maybe if you're finding this later on, this won't matter. But I hope you enjoy it. In the meantime, get cozy, get comfortable, and enjoy the spooky tales in Tales from the Saucy Crypt. And stay saucy. Thanks. How's everyone doing tonight? Happy Saturday. Spooky Saturday. I'll get to this in a second. That's Protection Kitty. This is Protection Kitty. Protection Kitty protects us. He's a little cheery little black cat with a little witchy. Protection Kitty. Well, eventually I'm not going to have the green screen actually for this stream. So his eyes won't be green screen. But he protects us. He was $7 at Walmart. Yeah, I'll get to this ominous binder here in a second. But I'm gonna I might be coughing a little. Or I might be taking pauses at some point to drink my tea and some water. I've had a nasty throat infection for the about last half week or so. And so I'm just trying to get better. But yes, I'm here tonight to tell you some spooky stories. So for the past week, I'll actually start talking about it now. For the past week or so, well actually even before Halloween, I've been looking for the very... Well, some say it doesn't exist, but I think it does. The Saucius Necronomicus. And I like to send the smoke towards the camera as if it's coming to you to send protection your way. But yes, so I've been looking for the Saucius Necronomicus to no avail. It's very hard to track down. It does seem like it doesn't exist. And in the last week, I started perusing the dark web. And I was wondering if anyone on there would be able to find or know where I could find a copy of the Saucius Necronomicus. And obviously there were people on there who goes like, ha, like very funny. You're never going to find a copy of that. Other people were saying like, I don't think you want to be looking for that, and so on and so forth. And then today, this afternoon, there was a buzz at our apartment, and there was a wrapped up bundle with a note, and the note says, "Be careful what you wish for." And inside was this printed copy of the Saucius Necronomicus. It's just in a binder. If you wanna, that's what it looks like. Very trippy and such. And there's, you know, the words, and it's all printed in here. But the spell at the beginning, which when it's time to read, I will do so. And there's not a reverse for reading. But I'm gonna try to find it. I think it's out there somewhere, and I'd like to have it, even if there's only one copy. I'd like to be the only owner of it. I think I want Protection Cat in the frame and the candle too. Actually, perfect. And then those are just, you know, another fun little decoration for the table. But Protection Cat will always protect us if we believe in Protection Cat. So let's start with, you know, the opening invocation, or whatever you want to call it. All creatures, all ghouls, all demons, all frights that call this ancient tome their home, I call upon thee to enter this hallowed ground. Exit this tome and regale us with your memories. No harm shall come upon those who listen and those who tell these dark tales. Protection has come in all forms, and your only purpose is to regale us with your stories. I call upon you, ghosts of the Saucy Tomb. Enter this home now and give me permission to tell your tales. So, hopefully the ghosts are here now. That's what they say it does. But put a little too much honey in this, I think, this time. Not that that's a problem. Just a little too sweet. But anyway, without further ado, let us get started with the first story, titled "Don't Let Them In." Addiction took our mother slowly, rocked her through it, and sung her to sleep, and sunk deep into the mattress on her bed. And also, let me know if the music is too loud or I'm too quiet. I want to make sure that you can hear me nice and clear. When her back teeth fell out, she left them on the side of the bathtub. I was 7, and I kept them in a matchbox. The missing pieces of her kept safe, so she wouldn't be lost forever. So, I need to turn off the fire. There we go. It's probably better. So maybe one day we could put her back together. Our house fell down around us, and we tried our best to raise ourselves. The ceilings had water damage, and the bottom stairs had dry rot, and in the winters, the radiators would bleed rust. But it was still our house, and Annie made it a home. My sister Annie mothered me, with lopsided band-aids on bruised knees and lukewarm microwave meals. She told me ghost stories and didn't mind when I crawled into her bed later on, too scared to sleep alone. She taught me to dance, barefoot on the living room carpet, music channel on full volume on the TV, shaking our hips before they were fully grown. She always let me shower first so the water was hot, never complaining when she had to make do with cold. She brushed my hair every day before school, even when I screamed and hit her when she caught the tangles. Annie was dark-haired like her father, whoever he had been, but I was blonde. Annie was desperate to be blonde too, like Marilyn Monroe, like Mom. I think she thought it would make them closer. Sorry, I'm grabbing my water. Make them closer, remind Mom less of her dad. I'd give anything for her to have her hands in my hair one more time, even if it hurt. She moved back to New York when I turned 18 and never came back. I still dream about her sometimes. Keeping up with our mother was impossible, and we learnt from a young age we would always be left behind. It didn't make it any easier. When she was drinking light, she shone. Would wake us up at 3 a.m. with pancakes dripping in cherry syrup. Sometimes when the weather was right and she'd had enough being drunk alone, she would call our school up and tell them. Sorry, I'm flipping the page. Oh my god. We had both come down with summer sickness and we'd drive to the beach instead. I remember being 9 years old in the back seat of the car coming home after one of our ocean days, sucking the salt from my fingers. Annie had just dyed her hair blonde from her best friend Jane, helping her bend over our kitchen sink. From behind, I couldn't tell who was mother and who was daughter. Radio up and windows down, blowing the sky inside. When she was drinking heavy, she'd be out all night. Hair piled up like a beauty queen, eyes glazed over and ringed with glitter and black. Sometimes she'd be gone a day or two. She would never tell us when. One day we'd just wake up to an empty house and the fridge packed full, post-it note on the front with a smear of Mom's lipstick and the outline of a kiss, telling us she'd be back soon. Sometimes she'd bring guys home, filling the table with beer cans and ashtrays, smoke up to the ceiling. Mom lost in the haze. We'd sleep with pillows over our heads, trying to drown out the music they would blast until the a.m. I don't know why, until the morning, and wake up to strangers at our kitchen table in the morning, asking us where we kept the coffee. When Mom drank too little, she fell apart. She wouldn't buy food, refrigerator, just a gaping hole in the wall. She'd chain smoke, leaving cigarette burns on the wallpaper up by the stairs, like the walls were sick and decaying. She barely slept, walking around with blue half-moons under her eyes, knuckles raw. She would scream at the slightest thing, and I remember once when I spilled a glass of juice on the couch. She looked over at me with dead eyes and dragged me off onto the carpet, and then took every single cushion off the couch and into the backyard and set them on fire. Annie went to watch a while from the window and then sat next to me on the floor, backs pressed against the skeleton of the seats, head resting in the crater of my collarbones. When Mom drank too much was the worst. She'd laugh too loud and too long at anything and everything until her mouth started to shake and she started crying. At the breakfast table into her cereal. Excuse me. Annie shut down when Mom was like this. Went somewhere deep inside herself where nobody could hurt her. She'd stay up until the morning watching old black and white movies on TV, whispering the lines she knew by heart like prayers. When I was 5, she'd cry when I'd find Mom passed out cold on her bed, sure she would never wake up. Annie would wipe my tears, tell me she was only sleeping just like the princesses in my storybook. We'd sit on Mom's bed together and wait for her to wake up. When we were older, I was the one who would pick Mom up off the bathroom floor again. And again, Annie would put her to bed, smoothing her hair off her face and the vomit from her mouth, changing her clothes if she'd pissed herself. Watching them then, there was no doubt that Annie was the mother now. It was one night in October, and I was 13, Annie 16. It was a Wednesday night, and Mom had been gone for 2 days. She'd call us that morning from a payphone, voice slurring down the line, telling us she was having the best time with all her new friends, hoped we were doing fine. When she asked me if I was having a good birthday, I hung up on her. Can I tighten this? Hold on. I apologize. I just want to, it's like kind of loose and I want it a little perfect. I hope that makes me a little louder or clearer, or if I was already perfect, whatever, I just was a little soft. That is, yes, excellent. When she asked me if I was having a good birthday, I hung up on her. My birthday had been the day before. Annie had given me a pile of presents, strawberry lip glosses and glittery nail polishes. I didn't ask where she'd got the money for them. I didn't care. We'd taken the bus to the beach with Jane, eaten the birthday cake she had made for me, sand getting into the frosting. It tasted like sweetness and the sea, and I savored every bite and scrape of sugar against my teeth. We watched the sun go down, Annie snapping grainy photos on her shitty Nokia as I blew out my candles, wishing over and over that Mom wouldn't come home, that she'd just stay gone this time. But that Wednesday night, me and Annie weren't speaking. Anger hung heavy between us, seeping through the floorboards. It began when she tripped at the bottom of the stairs. We'd both laugh, Annie throwing her head back, gap between her front teeth catching the light. When I'd bent to pick her up, I'd caught her breath, warm against the freckles on my cheek. I let go of her arms and she fell again, hitting the floor and grinning, shaking her hair from her face. Her breath was heavy with whiskey. I couldn't start picking her up too. I couldn't watch her fall again and again. Just like Mom, I knew she'd never get back up. I'd stared down at her, blonde hair fallen into her eyes, and I could see she was our mother. And all I could see was our mother. And then I was running, feet slamming the hallway like heartbeats turned loose. I'd run for the kitchen and tipped every bottle we had down the sink, shoving Annie back as she fought to stop me, catching liquor on her fingers as it fell. She grabbed my shoulders and made me drop the very last bottle. It smashed between us on the floor, glass shards shining like we dragged the stars out of the sky and broken them, pieces we could never put back. Outside, through the open windows, the scale turned pale gold, clouds a mess of pink and cream smeared across the horizon. I cried then, watching Annie on her knees, picking up the pieces. That was Annie, always trying to fix things even when it was too late. The smell of food dragged me from my room, stomach turning traitor into my ribcage, inside my ribcage. Annie was cooking pasta, real food, not made in a microwave. She'd set the table, Tammy Wynette singing softly from the CD player, Annie gently swaying her hips as she stirred the tomato sauce rich and warm. As we ate in silence, with every bite I forgave her. Mom never cooked dinner or remembered my favorite was spaghetti ever since I was a kid, or stayed sober long enough to sit up at a table. Annie wasn't Mom. We were washing the dishes when we first heard it. Sorry. A moth was crawling down the inside of the pane, and I cracked the window to let it out into the dark. From the backyard came a faint sound. I tilted my head to listen to it as it was coming from far off, crying. I figured it was Mika, the 2-year-old next door, having a tantrum loud enough for us to catch, or maybe even Lucky Strike the cat that junkies down the street, begging for food like he always did, or sometimes did. I always wanted to feed him when he came around, winding over my ankles, but Annie always stopped me, saying once you started giving, they never stopped taking. Looking back, I don't think she was talking about the cat. Annie flipped the Christmas lights strung up around the porch, and we sat on the plastic beach chairs watching the skies. When we were little, we'd sit outside and Annie would tell me the names of all the constellations and the stories of how they came to be hung up in the night sky. I had to grow up before I realized she made them all up as she went along. It was a game we still like to play now, making up ridiculous stories for the shapes we could pick out. Ah yes, that one there is Coors Light. It got there when God dropped it out of his convertible window and never picked it up, she said, nodding sagely and hiding her smile. Of course, I said, waving my hands and pointing up past the power lines, right next to the ashtray, left there by the angels on the smoke break. Yeah, they say if you wish it, all your dreams will come true, said Annie, grinning. She stopped laughing, voice quieter, face tilted up to all those dead stars. Let's wish, Emmy. Let's wish. So we did. The sound of crying interrupted us. It was closer this time, and definitely human. We turned to each other, confused. Annie shrugged, and I squinted out into the black. It sounded like a baby, lost and tired and alone. It must be Mika, I said, slowly getting to my feet. Maybe he walked around the back? Shit, do you want me to call Connie and tell her we'll bring him over? Annie didn't reply, and I sighed, rolling my eyes. Guess I'll do everything then. I stepped off the porch, grass soft against my heels. The air smelled like it might rain, fresh and clean and growing, a promise unfulfilled. Annie's voice was strained. I turned to her, smiling. It died on my face when I saw the look on her own. Em, get inside. Now. She was staring out into the dark, past me, opening the door with one hand behind her, fingers fumbling on the catch. I froze, barefoot in the dirt. I'd found what she was looking at. In the bushes by the back fence was a person, crouched with their knees tucked up neat under the chin, arms wrapped around their legs. Their mouth hung wide, softly opening and closing as he cried, like a child locked in the dark. Not like a child, but someone pretending, mimicking the sound, open and closed out in the blackness. Suddenly they straightened, snapping upright, face still hidden by the black. They were tall and thin, too thin to be a normal person. Panic made me move, animal instincts left over from the days we lived up in the trees carrying me forward. I was faster than Annie, dragging her inside and slamming the door behind us, hearing it bounce on its hinges as I locked it. We watched as the person slowly walked towards the house, steps deliberate and long. Annie reached for my hand, holding me tight, and it was supposed to loop, I'll have to fix that, and turned me to face her, holding my shoulders. Don't turn around, Emmy. Don't turn around. Instinctively, I started to look over my shoulder out into the darkness. Annie grabbed my face hard and shook her head. I knew then she was serious. Her voice cracked and she cleared her throat, gripping my hand tight enough to hurt, nails digging in, grounding herself. I looked down at our fingers interlocked, both of us grown from the same bones. I'm gonna call the cops and everything is going to be... Her voice faltered. Tears spilled over her lashes, dripping like the promise of rain. Annie never cried. Your phone's on the porch, she whispered, and bile crawled its way up my throat. Her phone was upstairs, charging. A soft tapping filled the silence. Annie turned to the window, eyes white, showing her eyes were so wide. It was the sound of someone's forehead against this glass, slowly, over and over. They started to speed up faster and harder, skin meeting glass, until they were slamming into the window hard enough to shake the panes. The tapping stopped, and I was about to ask Annie if I could look now when she screamed, followed by the sound of cracking glass and the loudest slam yet. Where's that sound? Oh no, I lost it. Maybe I didn't have a sound for that. Excuse me while... Nope, I didn't. Excuse me while I lose the immersion. Sorry. I thought I had one. Whoever was in our yard had just smashed their face hard enough into the window to break it. We ran upstairs 2 at a time, skipping the ones caved in with dry rot on instinct. I turned behind me once and Annie yanked my face back before I could see it. The sound of broken glass echoed behind us as we made it to the bathroom, locking the door. A thin, wailing cry, like a baby calling for its mother like the one we heard before, filled the hallway, trapped between the walls and locked doors. Annie threw her back against the door, feet jammed up against the bathtub, clutching the knife she had grabbed from the kitchen. I did the same, shoulder to shoulder. Slow footsteps started on the stairs, deliberate and casual. The crying had become mocking, almost laughter, shrill bursts of sounds and then giggles, high-pitched and abruptly stopping before starting again. The first door on the upstairs floor was my bedroom, and we heard the distinct sound of it slamming open. They were looking for us. What the fuck is going on? I asked Annie, not even bothering to brush away the tears that I couldn't stop falling. I watched my sister pick herself up off the floor and brace her hands on the door as we heard the sound of a second door slamming open. Mom's room. The next room on the hallway was the bathroom. Annie pulled me to my feet and handed me the knife. I shook my head and pushed it back to her, terrified of what would happen if I had to use it. Annie shoved me and pressed the knife into my hands, thumb pressing hard enough on the blade to bleed. I watched my sister's blood drip down her wrist, a winding red road, still pushing into my hands despite the pain. I took the knife. Something slammed against the wall that Mom's room shared with the bathroom. A high-pitched wail followed. I held my breath, could feel my heartbeat in the base of my throat, a wild and frantic thing. I'm gonna get the phone from my room. I shook my head violently, about to argue. Annie clamped a hand over my mouth. I could taste the blood on her hand, salty and sweet, like birthday cake by the ocean. Yes, I'm gonna get the phone, and I'm gonna call the cops, and we're gonna be okay. I shook my head again. It's the only way. When I go, I need you to lock the door, and you don't open it for anything or anyone. Not me. Not for me. Not for anyone. Promise me. I shook my head, and Annie pressed her hand into my mouth, crushing my teeth against my lips, so it made my eyes water. Yes, promise me, Em. Something smashed in the room next door. Annie brushed the hair off my face, gently tucking it behind my ear. Promise, she mouthed, and unlocked the door as slowly as possible, bolt scraping gently. I watched the curve of her shoulder disappear into the black hall outside like the moon in eclipse, and then she was gone. I couldn't move or breathe for a second, and then I slammed the bolt shut just as something bounced off the outside of the door. A high-pitched scream followed, handle rattling up and down hard enough to pop one of the screws. I watched it roll towards me on the tiles, and then silence. I sat with my back to the door, holding the knife and wishing I was holding Annie's hand instead. Still silence. Nothing but me and my lungs slowly filling the room with my breath. Came a voice through the door. I started, hands gripping the knife. Honey, what's going on? Mom? My voice cracked. Mama, is that you? I wrapped my arms around myself, shaking, trying to keep myself still. Sweetie, it's okay. Just open the door. It's okay, just let me in. The handle rattled again, gentler. Just let me in, it's all okay. She banged on the door and I took my handle off the bolt. Honey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I missed your birthday. I'm sorry, I'm such a terrible mother, please. Her voice broke and she started to cry. Just let me in, baby. I'm so sorry. I screwed my eyes shut. She sounded so sad and so lost. I just wanted her to hold me like when I was a kid and I'd come in off the swings with a scraped knee. Maybe this time she meant it. Maybe it would all be okay. My hand found its way to the bolt again. My sister's voice came through the door, warm and gentle. Yeah, Emily, let us in, it's all okay. My hand froze on the bolt, and I tightened my grip on the knife. Annie never called me by my full name. A hand banged on the door, handle rattling. Emily, let us in! Annie's voice became low and guttural, followed by the same shrill giggles from before. Mom spoke now, pleading and crying, voice getting louder and louder. Let us in! Let us in! Let us in! Over and over again, punctuated by fists on the door. I thought about demons and monsters, all the bedtime stories that we pray don't crawl out from under the bed. That's not my sister and you're not my mother! I screamed through the door, hands over my head. I climbed into the bathtub and curled into a ball, cradling myself, knife clutched to my chest. I didn't know what it was outside that door, but I knew it wasn't Annie. It wasn't the voice that yelled at when I changed TV channel. The one that sang me happy birthday. The one that told me I was smart, even when I got bad grades. The one that read me stories about princesses that never wake up. It wasn't human. Bangs and yells came from downstairs, followed by the footsteps of people running. A low, guttural howl ripped through the house, filling the room until I felt like I was drowning in the sound. And then the door was kicked in. I screamed, covering my eyes, waiting to die. Arms found me and lifted me from the tub, carrying me from the room. I looked at the outside of the door as I was carried downstairs. It was covered in long, scraping claw marks dragged down to the floor. Pillows ripped apart covered the hallway and soft down like it had snowed inside. I watched them drift slowly as men in uniforms checked each of the rooms that looked like they had been torn apart by something feral. Outside in our driveway were police cars and an ambulance. In the middle of all of it was Annie, bathed in blue and red light as it washed over her, lit up in the dark like a neon angel, face aglow. I threw myself from the cop's shoulder and ran to her, holding us both together, broken pieces and all, standing under all those constellations we made up. Gentle screaming came from the ambulance, which rocked occasionally. Annie gently turned my head away, smiling so sadly it made my chest ache as I understood. Turns out, there was no demon. No wild animal or bad men trying to break in. It was just my mom coming out of her mind on booze and drugs and everything in between, coming to the end of a week-long binge. Something had finally broken inside her head, and this time we couldn't put her back together no matter how hard we tried. Sometimes you fall one last time and you never get back up. Annie had seen her in the garden, blood dribbling from her mouth, track marks bulging on her forearms like unmapped roads, rail thin and desperate for one more hit, one more fix. She'd searched the kitchen for all the drink I'd thrown away, and when she hadn't found it, had come to hunt for the stash she hid in the bathroom. She hadn't wanted me, just the drugs on the other side of the door, so she couldn't... Why would you scare me like that?
I was trying to say goodbye.
I know, but I literally... That... Oh my god.
Trying not to interrupt your stream very much.
I was immersed. Oh my god. Whew. She hadn't wanted me, just the drugs on the other side of the door, so high she could mimic Annie's voice almost perfectly. Turns out the real monsters are the ones that eat you alive slowly, the kind that come in a bottle or a needle, or at the end of a long list of reasons why you can't get out of bed in the morning. Sometimes the monsters are the ones that raise you or love you the most, but it's up to you if you let them in. So that was Don't Let Them In, I believe was the title. Let me go back to the front. Yeah, Don't Let Them In. And that was written by Coney Island Queen. And most of these stories, unless I say otherwise, are coming from the No Sleep Forum on Reddit. So props to all of those people. Yeah. Nothing like a little spooky spook there, huh? But thank you, anonymous stranger who left the Saucius Necronomicus on our porch or lawn. Okay, so the tea I'm drinking, the brand is Yogi, and it's throat comfort. I put in a little honey, but it has licorice bark. And slippery elm root, or licorice root and slippery elm root, a bunch of other things. It has like cinnamon and orange peel, but specifically the licorice root and the slippery elm root are supposedly good for your throat if you have a sore throat. And I've been drinking, like it says, like drink at least 3 cups a day. So I've been drinking about 3 or 4 hot cups a day with honey in it, and oh my god. My infection was gone. I mean, I was also taking medicine and stuff and resting and drinking a lot of orange juice as well and fluids. But like something that I feel like they're supposed to last from like 3 to 7 days lasted about like 3 days for me. It was well, I probably shouldn't have gone to work today. I was alone. It wasn't like anyone was around, and I wore 2 masks, and I disinfected everything, and I wore gloves, but I had to, I work in diabetes research, if you don't know, so when I miss 2 days of work, that could be problematic. I also realized that the red, part of that was showing. So I had to go in today to kind of catch up, and so my boss didn't have to go in. Plus, I oddly like work on Saturdays, because there's no one around. It's kind of peaceful. I listen to podcasts. I mean, I listen to podcasts whenever I'm not, when I am working, I mean. Anyway, but, yeah. So that was the first story. thank you, I think Coney Island Girl I said, for that spooky tale. I know I call it the Saucius Necronomicus, but like, these books are immortalized. These people write them. They might publish them online, but when they're actually in the book, those are the. It's kind of like an NFT, but a lot cooler and a lot less bad for the environment, and not problematic for our world's economy. You know what? I don't want to take the stories out until I'm done reading them. I don't know what that might do. I don't know what that might do to the world. I'll read the story first. That's probably safer, right? I don't even know if I released the spirits, you know? But I like to think I did. I like to think they're around. Right, Protection Kitty? Okay. So this next story that we're about to start is called The Artist. There's this painting my wife loves called Death and Life by Klimt. I don't know what she finds so fascinating about it. I made all the right noises when she showed me her beloved framed print when we were first dating, oohing and eyeing and making up some bullshit about warm and cold color schemes and the specific choice of angles and line. She was an artist. Our first few dates involved long walks through museums, starting in Picasso's Blue Period and ending in heavy petting and blue balls. I took an art history course as an elective when I was finishing up my doctorate. I remembered enough of the lingo to charm my fantastically gorgeous future wife and lure her back to my stupidly filthy apartment. We're talking me as the foul bachelor frog sitting on a lily pad made of empty takeout containers, surrounded by a pond of enough unwashed clothes to keep a laundromat business for a cool 6 months. I remember scrambling to find 2 of any sort of cup-like container for the bottle of wine we had brought back while she was in the bathroom. I rinsed out a couple of coffee mugs and ran into the bedroom to try to clean up the condom wrappers that had been sitting on my bedside table since 2003. On the bed, neatly laid out against the rest of the chaos, were my wife's dress, bra, and panties. She came out of the bathroom completely nude, aside from a pair of heels, took the wine from me, and took a swig straight from the bottle. I fell totally, completely, and irrevocably in love. I had no head for artistic things. I work in finance. I get creative with numbers, not paint, but I fucking love her stuff. She's made a name for herself over the past few years. Critics call her the American Damien Hirst. One of her first exhibits was composed of a dozen oil paintings of rotting pastries surrounding an actual cake filled with thousands of dead lily bugs being fed to a mummified tarantula dressed up as Little Miss Muffet. I have no idea what it meant, but it was sick, successful, and catered by Balthazar, so I ate about 20 croissants. They did not have bugs in them, I checked. She was amazing. She had the body of a Laker girl and the face of a Modigliani model, and still does. She's charming, charismatic, deep, the kind of person people flock to, want to be around constantly. She fucked like she had something to prove. She had a twisted sense of humor. As soon as I hooked a job with enough figures to keep a girl like her satisfied the way she should be, I proposed. Bought her a historical brownstone in the city with a garden full of roses and hardwood mahogany floors. And for the first few years, she seemed happy. We were the kind of couple you see in New York Magazine and scoff at because they're just too damned lucky. But we had a rough spot like all married couples do. She was still the superficially same woman I fell in love with, looked amazing. People always asked me when she was going to host the next dinner party. She still had an amazing eye for art. I knew she was miserable. I could see it, the misery, in the corners of her eyes and the curve of her mouth. It happened gradually. First, it was the shower curtain. She bought 3 or 4 from a small boutique downtown. Brought them home so we could choose one out together. We decided on one pale blue, made of material that was impractical and way too expensive for a drapery in a bathroom, but we had the money and it made her happy, so why the hell not? A few days later, I was shaving and realized she still hadn't put the curtain up. It wasn't until about a month after I caught a glimpse of it hanging up in her studio, cut to shreds and dyed till it was almost unrecognizable. I chose to ignore it because I had learned it's usually not the best course of action to call an artist art on their creative license, unless you want to start an all-out war with no discernible end. I lost my place for a second when I had to push out my glass. Oh, I'm sorry. A year after that, though, I had no choice. She had been so on edge it was like standing on a razor. She usually had a show every 3 or 4 months or so, and if anything, she had too many ideas. The galleries always asked her to trim down her collection. When the years passed without so much as a single finished painting, I started to worry, both about her well-being and our bank account. We were extravagant spenders, and each of her shows would bring in a cool 20 grand that paid for a few months of European beaches and ski trips in Aspen. The final straw, though, is when she burned down the roses. It turned out she had finished dozens of projects over the year. She hated all of it, and had either destroyed or painted over everything. While I was at the office, she flew off the handle, doused about 16 canvases in lighter fluid, and set the yard on fire. When I got the call from the fire department, I rushed home to find her sitting in the back of the ambulance, covered in ashes, blonde hair singed at the ends. She was smoking a cigarette. I looked over the burnt flowers, the skeletons of her paintings, the ruined limbs of broken sculptures, and asked her what happened and why. She took a drag of her cigarette and said, "It was mine to burn." She took big, fancy pictures of the inferno, a family of bunnies suffocated in the smoke. She had stuffed and mounted in size order on baking soda volcano, like the kind you see in middle school fairs. She gathered up a few of the charred bits and pieces, wired it together, and made some warped, pained-looking kind of phoenix thing, weighing in at 400 pounds and easily over 8 feet high. She called the whole thing From the Ashes, and the reviews in the Times called it incendiary, her first foray into becoming a true artist. Someone bought the phoenix. I pity the person who wakes up every day and looks at that strange thing, suspended in constant agony. We were both drunk at a random, expensive, vaguely Dante's Inferno-themed bar in San Francisco when I finally got a chance to ask her what was bothering her. We had been making dark jokes all night about the beautiful irony of her show and our current locale. At first, she vehemently denied anything was wrong, angrily pointing out that we had made 4 times as much, off her last show as anything before it, that it had more than covered the damages, that it had paid for the vacation we stayed on. I stayed silent. She tossed her newly cropped hair and looked like she was going to open for a second. I saw her soft blue eyes fill with tears. Then she took a shot of whiskey from a glass that had a bull's head and smirked. "Well, for starters," she slurred, nonchalantly dangling the glass from the bull's nose ring, "I'm fairly certain I'm pregnant." She let the glass drop from her finger and it shattered on the floor. She slid out of her seat and stumbled to the exit. I sat there for a while and drank more, feeling furious, confused, and miserable. I remembered her face when she showed me that Klimt painting. I remembered how she wore glasses back then, and how she pushed them up the bridge of her nose when she smiled, as I talked about the fucking warm and the fucking cold colors and the fucking angles and lines. We converted her studio into a nursery. Rather, I did, while she stayed in San Francisco and did God knows what with her artist friends. I had a landscaper come in and replant the roses. I worked a lot of overtime, drank myself to sleep while I skimmed through parenting books. She came back when she was almost full term. I came home from work one night to find sonogram pictures posted all over the fridge of 2 healthy-looking twins, big baby girls. I walked into our bedroom and saw her dead asleep on top of the covers, belly swollen, smelling faintly like pot and paint thinner. She had a rainbow of dried paint on her fingertips. I loosened my tie and walked to the nursery. She had been busy. The canary yellow I had chosen was covered in a layer of translucent blue, and she had covered one wall in Klimt-esque patterns and curlicues. The creamy plush carpet was covered in paint splatters. She had worked furiously to finish. She had cut a swath from one of the new rose bushes and made a giant bouquet, shoving them so tightly in the vase that some had escaped and made their way from their perch on the changing table to the floor. She had scattered them in the bassinet on the windowsill.
It was chaotic and beautiful. The next few years were peaceful for the most part. We bonded over raising the girls. Despite my wife's less than careful prenatal preparation, they were wickedly smart and beautiful. They both looked like her, with long, curly brown ringlets and blue eyes. Sometimes when I put them to bed, I wonder if any of my DNA was in them at all. They were like miniature versions of her. My wife agreed to see a psychiatrist for a little bit. She took some medication for a while. Xanax, some mood stabilizers. Eventually, she and her doctor decided her crisis had been not hormonal and temporary. We started having dinner parties again, soothed the gossip that had infected our social circles. She stopped painting and took up teaching at a university. She seemed content again, even happier than she was before. Every once in a while, I would catch a look in her eyes like repressed artillery fire, like she was ready to explode at any second. But it never lasted than a few seconds before they went back to the soft cornflower blue I knew so well. And who doesn't get a little agitated every once in a while? I rose through the ranks at work. I loved the feeling of power that came with promotions. I loved my girls, and by God, I loved her. My crazy, disgusting, beautiful, hateful, and loving, extraordinary wife. Then came today. Today I came home from work early. Today my wife took the day off to be a chaperone on a class trip to the Met. They were after her for months because of her expertise in the art world. They wanted the children to experience the culture in the most sophisticated way possible. I thought it was ridiculous. They were 1 to 3-year-olds in a private daycare. They saw more beauty in Cheerios than in Monet's water lilies. But they wore my wife down, and she was given a gaggle of toddlers and wide-eyed teachers to tour around the museum. I came home for lunch because I had forgotten my iPad that had notes on it for a presentation I was giving that night. I walked through the rose garden and noticed a tiny piece of sculpture left over from the ashes exhibit from so long ago. It was half of a tiny bird. It had the kind of exquisite detail that my wife used to be so famous for. I was pretty sure it was an actual bird that she had cast in clay. I thought I could see a small piece of feather in one of the cracks. I idly wondered why I hadn't noticed it before. I went inside and poured myself a glass of orange juice. The fridge had pictures that my daughters drew. Happy, crooked stick figures that looked nothing like the beautiful horrors that their mother used to churn out. I was happy about that. I hoped they would fall in love with numbers like I did. It was absolutely silent, and I sipped the sweet citrus and enjoyed the nothingness. Then I thought I caught a vague scent of fresh paint in the air. Curious, I walked into the living room, and there was my wife, sitting on the leather couch with a bottle of wine, looking like an angel of death. She was covered head to toe in blue-gray body paint, with a special concentration underneath her eyes. She was wearing a revealing patchwork blue dress, covered in crosses of various shapes and sizes. Not a dress, I realized, but the shredded shower curtain from so many years ago. I could see most of her still perfect breast, the curve of her waist. The bottle of wine was elongated and painted a strange shade of orange. The smell of paint was stronger in here, an overwhelming smell of lighter fluid. And something else I couldn't place. She'd shaven her head. I stared at her for a while. Minutes? An hour, maybe? Eventually, she took a swig of wine from the bottle, swirling it around in her mouth. I noticed paint, deep blues and even deeper reds, around her fingers. I sat down in the armchair across from her, unable to think of what exactly I wanted to ask her. Maybe because I knew. Maybe because I didn't want to know. I noticed a camera on the table between us. I went to pick it up, and she rested her gray hand on mine. Before I could, softly, gently, with all the familiarity of years of marriage, she opened her mouth to speak, soft pink lips made pallid by the paint. They were mine. And I've been sitting here, knowing what's behind the door to my daughter's room with the klimt wall we never repainted, knowing why my phone keeps ringing with calls from the school, from the NYPD, knowing why I couldn't find my sleeping pills last night, knowing what that smell is, seeing in my peripheral the red pooling and staining the carpet from underneath the door, the pile of clothes neatly folded next to my wife on the couch. I can picture that thick wire she used to fit all of her subjects where she wanted them. What a perfect, detailed recreation it must be. Because she's so perfect. I see the phoenix in my mind's eye. I hope when she flicks that cigarette she's about to light, that we both fucking burn. So that was written by number 9. And it's like number without the R. And then the number 9. And that was the artist. So, yeah. The funny thing about this one is when I was looking at people discussing it on the Saucius Necronomicus stuff, you know, a lot of people didn't understand the ending, which is a shame because I feel like that was like such a good part. I just love how the mother is like, they were mine. Exactly. That one was more like a slow burn. Kind of like, ooh, okay. What is that? Is that matricide is the killing of your mother. Patricide is the killing of your father. What's the killing of your children? Yeah. I think we're just going to go straight into the next story. Because this one's a little shorter. This one's only a couple of... This one's probably the shortest one of the night. And this one was called My Friend's Life Seems... Excuse me. Had a little burpy burp. No. This is I've been having I've had a throat infection for the last couple of days. So that is actually throat comfort tea with some honey in it. That has special it has licorice root and slippery elm bark, slippery elm root, which is apparently good for I'm cozy and protected because we got the protection incense. I'm trying to move my chair forward a little. There we go. My back was hurting a little. We got protection kitty right here. We got the protection incense, which I'm sure by the time I finish this next story, I'll be able to light the next one for the last couple of stories. Yeah. We'll get right into it. So this one is called My Friend's Life Seems Perfect on Instagram. I found out it isn't so perfect after all. My friend Callie has the perfect life. I mean, look at this shit. Posted on Instagram a week ago. John made an impromptu campfire in our backyard tonight. We ate s'mores, stargazed, and fell asleep. I am so blessed. Hashtag happily ever after. And underneath a beautiful photo of Callie, John, and their 2 kids lit by a campfire. The kids were smiling and well-dressed. He was handsome as always, smiling, a shadow of stubble along his jaw. She had a full face of makeup, a cute dress. I mean, really, do other moms have time for that? Because I sure as hell don't have time to put on makeup. I barely even have time to go to the bathroom. Okay, maybe I was a little jealous. But I mean, come on. She was beautiful. Her husband was some hotshot doctor. Their kids were perfectly behaved at playgroup. I was a total disaster compared to them. The next day there was another update. Even on bad days, John is my sunshine. Today he made me my dinner, my favorite, hashtag Eggs Benedict. And he tells me I'm beautiful even when I'm not wearing makeup, hashtag love my hubby. Underneath another perfect photo. Although this one was even worse. Trying to look imperfect, down to earth. She was clearly wearing makeup, but natural enough that I couldn't argue her on it. I could make out the caked layers of foundation around her left eye, more than really seemed necessary. I wonder if she's got super dark circles under her eyes. Ooh, a huge pimple. Then I frowned. You're being mean. Of course she has embarrassing imperfections. So do you. So does everyone. But I couldn't help but be jealous. Every day of parenting my 2 kids, I felt like I was spinning out of control, barely keeping it together. Only one diaper blowout or 3 major tantrum from going insane. This woman, she was actually enjoying motherhood. What the fuck? Look at this woman, I complained to my husband one night. She just posted a new photo. Her kids in a little fort John had built them in their finished basement. My husband is so talented. He built this fort for them in one day. It's absolutely #perfect and #magical. Look at the little doors, OMG. Nice fort, my husband said through a mouthful of Doritos. They sell those on Amazon? No, he built it. That's awesome! I narrowed my eyes at him. How do they have the time to do this stuff like that? It's ridiculous. We're barely staying alive here. Nannies, he said, shoving more chips in his mouth. What? They got a nanny, obviously. She does all the lousy work like cleaning poop and doing laundry. Then they have time to fuck around and build forts. Huh. That was a possibility I hadn't considered. I smiled, feeling a little better about myself. Yeah, maybe that's it. I stared at the photo. The 2 kids stood inside the wooden fort, which looked expertly constructed. Inside, the little girl and little girl poked their heads out, smiling. The little girl's hair was perfectly pinned back with a bow, and the boy was wearing a fancy button-down shirt. Behind them, the basement was clean. Even their toys had all been put away. John crouched next to them, handsome with his wavy dark hair and brilliant white smile. Perfect. Magical. I felt a pang of longing. Then I turned off my phone, rolled over, and went to sleep. Oops. Sorry. There we go. When I woke up, there was already a new post from her. It was a selfie of her and him standing together on a boat. Behind them, the sun rose, painting the sky in beautiful hues of red. The open sea glistened and sparkled. My hubby surprised me with a wonderful trip out in his boat. Feeling so blessed right now. I love him more than #everything, more than life itself. I stared at the photo. Something seemed a little off about it. For one, he was holding the camera. Usually when I saw couple selfies, the woman was the one holding the camera. Mainly because the man never really wanted to take a selfie in the first place. And the way she was sitting was weird too. Leaned up against him, her arms tucked behind her. A horrible realization hit me. I scrolled up through her last few posts. #happily ever after. #eggs benedict. #love my husband. #perfect. #magical. #everything. Taking the first letter of each tag, they spelled out something horrible. Help me. I glanced at the post of her on the boat, 6:32 a.m., a little over an hour ago. More than life itself. He was going to kill her. I grabbed my phone and called the police. After hours of searching, they finally found them. Callie tied up on her husband's boat, John armed with a knife. When the police searched the house, they found the 2 kids locked in the fort in the basement, scared, crying, but completely unharmed. According to Callie, John started beating her months ago. He gave her a black eye, then a few days later, took her on his boat, planning to throw her in the water, never to be seen again. She knew he checked her phone, read her texts, her emails, wouldn't allow her to make a call without him in the room, so she sent out a message through hashtags, hoping he wouldn't catch on, and hoping that someone wouldn't hear her plea. Help me. So that one was written by Robert Mort 1. So that one was good. Kind of reminds me a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit off of a tangent here. So I'm a little creepy. No, I'm kidding. Probably shouldn't have phrased it like that. What I mean by that is I like creepy things. I like reading about serial killers and just I like true crime. I like things like that. And so I've listened to, there's a podcast I love. Tony is a Creep. The podcast I listen to called Scared to Death. There's Creeps and Peepers. And I'm definitely a creeper. Hardcore. Even though I jump at everything. But I listen to every episode of Crime Junkies. And Um, I do like false crime. I think we made that joke last week too. um, there's a serial killer that Crime Junkies did an episode on called Israel Keys. Which, first of all, go listen to that episode. Literally one of the wildest serial killers I think I've ever heard about. Like, if I had to rank my favorite serial killers in a kind of weird aspect like that, he would definitely be my number one. But one thing he did, when the last person he kidnapped before, before he got caught, he had already killed her when he was asking for the ransom, and like he basically like sewed her eyes open and posed her with like the current day's newspaper to make it look like she was still alive. And that just fucking gives me chills. Let's get us all blessed. You know, obviously we need to bless this place so we don't get cursed by the ghosts. It's protecting us, and hopefully it protects you a little. I don't really think having a binder-like version is, gonna bring the spirits. I have no idea. I'd like to think it does. But like I said, I'm hoping one day, soon, in the next couple of streams, I'm actually able to get a real copy of the Saucius Necronomicus. Here's the blessing for you. There you go. I hope you feel protected now. Because I know I do. Right, Protection Kitty? Okay. So I have 2 more tales for you all tonight. All right, let me just try to adjust. Okay. That's good, perfect. So I have 2 more tales for you tonight. This one is called Something Walks Whistling Past My House Every Night at 3:03. Every night, no matter the weather, something walks down our street whistling softly. You can only hear it if you're in the living room or the kitchen when they walk by, and it always starts at exactly 3:03. The sound starts faint, somewhere near the beginning of the lane near the Carson place. We're towards the middle of the street, so the whistling moves past us, before fading away in the direction of the cul-de-sac. When I was younger, my sister and I would sneak into the kitchen some nights to listen. Mom and Dad didn't like that, and we'd catch hell if they found us out there. But they were never too hard on us, since we always stuck to the one big rule: don't try to look at whatever was whistling. My neighborhood is a funny place. I've lived here since I was 6, and I love it. The houses are small but well kept, good-sized yards. Plenty of places to roam. There are a lot of other kids here my age. I turned 13 back in October. We grew up together, and would always play foursquare on the cul-de-sac, or roam around from back porch to back porch in the summer. This was a good place to grow up. I'm old enough to see it. And there's only the 2 strange things here: the night whistling and the good luck. The whistling never bothered me much. Like I said, I couldn't ever hear it from my bedroom. But Mom and Dad don't like talking about it, so I've stopped asking questions. My dad is a strong guy, tall and calm. He has an accent since he moved to the U.S. as a kid. His family, my grandparents, they're from the islands. That's what they call it. My dad, the only time he isn't so calm is if the whistler comes up. He talks a little quicker then. Eyes move faster. And he tells us not to think about it so much, and to always remember the one rule, the big rule. Don't try to look outside when the whistler goes past. Not that we could look even if we wanted. See, there are shutters on the inside of every window. Thick pieces of heavy canvas that pull down from the top and latch to the bottom of the window frame. Each latch even has a small lock about the size of what you'd find on a diary. My dad locks those shutters every night before we all go to bed and keeps the key in his room. My mom, I don't know what she thinks about the whistling. I've seen her out in the living room before at 3:03 when the sound starts. I could see her if I cracked my door open just an inch to peek. She's not out there often. At least I haven't caught her much. But once or twice a month, I think she sits out there on our big red couch just listening. The whistler has the same tune every night. It's cheerful. Remember how I said there are two odd things about where I live? Well, besides our night whistler, everyone in my neighborhood is really lucky. It's hard to explain, and Dad doesn't like us talking about this part much either. But good things just seem to happen to people around here a lot. Usually it's small things, winning a radio contest or getting an unexpected promotion at work, or finding some arrowheads buried in the yard. You know, the authentic kind. The weather is pretty good and there's no crime, and everybody's gardens bloom extra bright in the fall. A million little blessings I've heard my mom say about living here. But the main reason we stay here, why we moved here in the first place, is my sister Nola. She was born very sick, something with her lungs. We couldn't even bring her home when she was born, only visit her in the hospital. She was so small, I remember, small even compared to the other babies. A machine had to breathe for her. We moved into our house here to be closer to the hospital. As soon as we moved here, Nola started getting better. The doctors couldn't figure it out. They chalked it up to whatever they were doing, but we could all tell they were confused. But my parents knew. Even I knew. Nola getting better was just another of the million little blessings we got for living in our neighborhood. Why does that keep going off? What's happening? It's something with my voice mod, I think. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. I'm just gonna go. Did we hear the welcoming committee? Is that? I'll just start back at the welcoming committee. See, our neighborhood has a welcoming committee. Nola got bet. Oh, okay, yeah. So I'll just say, okay. Testing, testing. How do I sound? Do I sound good? Do I sound clear? And can we hear the audio? Are we good? Okay. I'm wondering it could have been related to the port it was plugged in. So I'm hoping that fixes it. I'm just adjusting my robe. I'm just gonna. I think it was the USB port it was in. You know how they have like there's the blue, the like USB like 5.0. Yeah, that was just telling me that the device was ready because I plugged it into a new USB. I think it was. I didn't have it plugged into like the mega USB port, and that was probably what the issue was causing. Okay. I think we're in business. Let's see. She was born very sick. We couldn't even bring her home when she was born. Only visit her in the hospital. She was so small, I remember. Small even compared to the other babies. A machine had to breathe for her. We moved into our house here to be closer to the hospital. As soon as we moved here, Nola started getting better. The doctors couldn't figure it out. They chalked it up to whatever they were doing, but we all could tell they were confused. But my parents knew. Even I knew. Nola getting better was just another of the million little blessings we got for living in our neighborhood. So that's why we stayed even after we found out that for every small miracle that happens here every day, now and then, some bad things do happen. But they only happen if you look for the Whistler. See, our neighborhood has a welcoming committee. They show up with macaroni casserole and a gift basket and a manila folder whenever someone new moves in. They're very friendly. 4 people showed up when we moved in 7 years ago. The committee made small talk, gave me a Snickers bar, and took turns holding Nola. It was her first week out of the hospital, so they were extra careful. Then the committee asked to speak to my parents in private, so I was sent to my room where I still managed to hear nearly every word. The welcoming committee told my parents about how nice the neighborhood was, really exceptionally, hard to explain kind of nice. And then they told my parents about the even harder to explain whistling that happened every morning at 3:03 and ended at the tick of 3:05. The group, our new neighbors, warned my parents that the whistling was quiet, would never harm or hurt us as long as we didn't look for what was making the sound. This part they stressed, and I pushed my ear into the door, straining to hear them. People who went looking for the whistler had their luck change, sometimes tragically. A black cloud would hang over anyone that looked. Anything that could go wrong would. The manila envelope the committee brought over contained newspaper clippings, stories about car crashes and ruined lives, public deaths and freak accidents. Not everyone dies, I heard the head of the committee tell my dad, but the life goes out of them. Even if they live, there's no light in them ever again, no presence. My mom, I could tell she wasn't taking it seriously. She kept asking if this was some kind of prank they play on new neighbors. At one point, my mom got angry, accused the committee of trying to scare us out of our new home. Asked them if they were racist on account of my dad being from the islands. My dad calmed her down, told her he could tell our new neighbors were sincere and they were just trying to help us. He explained that he grew up hearing these kinds of stories from his mom and that he knew there were strange things that walked among us. Some of these strange things were good and some were bad, but most were just different. After the committee left, Dad went out to the hardware store, bought the canvas blinds, the latches, and the locks, and installed them on every window in the house after dinner. Excuse me. That first night in our new house, I crept out of my room at 3 a.m., only to find my dad awake sitting on the living room couch, holding my baby sister. My dad held his finger up in a shushing motion, but patted the couch next to him. I sat and we waited. At exactly 3:03, we heard the whistling. It came and went, just like our neighbors said. The whistling returns each night, and we never look, and we enjoy our million little blessings every day. Nola breathed on her own, and she's grown into a strong, clever girl. My dad even joined the welcoming committee. We don't get new neighbors often. Why would anyone want to leave? But when a new family moves in, my dad and the committee bring them macaroni casserole, a gift basket, and the manila folder. I can always tell by the look on my dad's face when he comes back if the family took the committee seriously or if we'd be getting new neighbors again very soon. Not long ago, a family moved in directly next to us. The previous owner, Miss Maddie, passed away at age 105. She'd lived a good, long life. Our new neighbors seemed like they'd fit in just fine. They believed the welcoming committee, took my dad's advice about the locking shutters since they had a young child of their own. Whatever newspaper clippings were in that manila folder, whatever evidence, my dad never let us see. But I imagine it must have been awfully convincing since our neighbors got along with no issues for the first month. One night when our new neighbors had to leave town, they sent their son Holden to stay with us. He was 12, a year under me in school. I didn't know him well before that night, but as soon as his parents dropped him off after dinner, I could tell it was going to be a bad time. "Do you know who's always out there whistling every night?" Holden asked the moment the adults left the room. The three of us were sitting in the den, some Disney movie playing idly on the television. My sister and I exchanged a glance. "We don't talk about that," I said. I think it's that weirdo that lives in the big yellow house on the corner," Holden said. "Mr. Tolles?" my sister asked. "No way, he's really nice." Holden shrugged. "Must be a psycho killer then." Nola tensed. "We don't talk about it," I repeated. "Let's go in my room and play Nintendo." We spent the next few hours playing games, eating popcorn, and then watching movies. A typical sleepover, but I could see Holden was getting antsy. After my parents had wished us a good night, locked the blinds, and gone to bed, Holden stood up from his beanbag and walked over to where Nora and I were sitting on the bed. "Have you even tried looking?" he asked. "It's nearly time." Like most sleepovers, we'd conveniently ignored any suggestion of a bedtime. I was shocked to see he was right. It was almost 3 a.m. Excuse me. I sighed. "We don't... See? I can't even try to look because my dad locks the blinds every night and hides the key," he continued, ignoring me. "So does our dad," said Nola. "No," replied Holden. "No, he doesn't." Oh my god. "You saw him do it," I said, a little sharper than I meant to sound. Holden grinned. "Your dad locks the blinds, yeah, but he doesn't hide the key. He keeps it right on his normal keychain." "So?" I asked, worried I already knew what he would say next, because I had noticed that my dad didn't bother hiding the key anymore after all these years, because he knew we took it seriously. "So, after your dad locked up, but before your parents went to bed, I went to the bathroom, and on my way, I may have peeked into their room, and I may have seen your dad's keychains on his nightstand, and I maybe went in and borrowed the keys to the blinds." Nola and I stared, and his grin only grew wider. You're lying," I said. Holden shrugged. "You can check if you want. Just open your parents' door and look. You'll see his keychain right there on the nightstand." "Stay here," I told both of them. "Don't move a muscle." I hurried over to my parents' room, but hesitated at the door. If Holden wasn't lying, my dad would be angry. Beyond angry. I was scared thinking about it, but more scared of an open window with the whistler right outside. I opened the door, barely an inch, and looked in, but it was too dark to see. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the room. 2 steps into the dark, I froze. 2 steps into the dark, I froze. The whistling started, and I could hear it clearly from my parents' room. I never realized, but they must have heard the sound every night since we moved into the house. They never told us. I don't think I could have slept through it. I stood there listening to the whistling come closer, unsure whether I should turn on a light or call out for my dad. Soft sounds from the living room brought me to my reality. "Nola!" I yelled, running out of my parents' room. Holden and Nola were standing near the front door next to a window. Holden wasn't lying. I could see him fumbling with the lock on one of the blinds. I heard a click. He did have the key. Holden let out a quick laugh. Nola stood next to him, hunched up, afraid, but maybe curious. The whistling was right outside our house now. I think I made a sound, called out, I can't remember. Time felt frozen, clock hands nailed to the face, but I found myself moving. I'm not fast, I've never been athletic. Somehow, though, I covered the space between myself and Nola in a moment. My eyes were locked on her, but I heard Holden pull the blind all the way down so it could release. I heard the snap of it start to rise, and I heard the whistling just on the other side of the window. But I had my arms around Nola, and I turned us just so she was facing away from the window. At the same time, I jammed my eyes shut. The blind whipped open. The whistling stopped. "What are you doing, Bam Bam?" I felt Nola shaking in my arms. "Don't look, okay?" I told her. "Don't turn around." We were positioned so that she was facing back towards the hallway, and I was facing the window. My eyes were still closed. I felt her nod into my shoulder. I reached out with my arm, not holding Nola, and tried to touch Holden. My hand brushed against his arm. He was shaking worse than Nola. "Holden?" I asked. Silence. I rushed past him and gingerly felt for the window, eyes still sealed shut. The glass was cold against my fingertips, colder than it should have been for the time of year. I moved my hand up the window, searching for the string of the blind. The glass began to get warmer the further I reached, and there was a gentle hum feeding back into my fingertips. I tried not to think about what might be on the other side of the window. Finally, I touched the string and yanked the blind shut. I opened my eyes. In the dim light leaking out from the kitchen, I could make out Holden, pale and small, staring at the now closed window. "Holden?" I asked again. He turns towards me. Bam Bam almost just knocked over that table. He turns towards me, and he screamed. Everything became a flurry of motion. Lights sparked to life in the hall, then the living room. My parents' footsteps thudded across the hardwood floor. I didn't look back at them. My eyes were glued to Holden. He was pale. He had bit his lips so hard there was a thin red line of blood running down his chin, and he'd wet himself. "What happened?" my dad asked me from behind. I managed to swivel away from Holden and look back. He looked. I've never seen my dad scared before, but I saw it that night. In that moment, an old, ugly terror stitched on his face. A parent's fear. "Just Holden?" he mouthed to me. I nodded yes. My dad let out a breath. He looked so relieved I nearly expected him to cheer. But then he turned to Holden, and my dad's face changed. I wonder if he felt bad for feeling good that Holden was the only one that looked. There was a knock at the door. We all froze. Holden whimpered. "Don't answer it," my mom said. She stood at the threshold of the hall. I'd always thought she was a skeptic and just humored my dad about the windows and the whistler. But that night we were all believers. I noticed that both of my parents held baseball bats they must have taken from their bedroom. The knock came again, a little louder this time. "Please don't open the door," Holden whispered. My dad walked over to him, hugged him close. "We won't," my dad promised, still holding his bat. "Nothing is coming in here tonight." Thud, thud, thud. This time the knocking was loud enough to rattle the door. Holden screamed again, and Nola clutched her arms around my neck. My mom came over and knelt down next to us, wrapping my sister and me close. "Thud! Thud! Thud!" "Call the police," my mom whispered to my dad. The knocking instantly stopped. My dad looked at his shoulder over at us. "Do you think?" He was cut off by frantic knocking that trailed off to a polite tap, tap, tap. "Police!" something said from the other side of the door. The voice from outside sounded exactly like my mom, like a parrot, repeating the words back to her. "Police! Call! The police!" Tap, tap, tap. "Police!" My mom pulled us closer. "Police! Police! Police! Police!" "Please stop," I heard her whisper. "I don't think calling them will help," my dad said. "How will we know when the real ones are at the door?" The knocking came back harder than before. The door shook, then it stopped. After a long moment, I heard the knocking again, but it was coming from our back door. We all turned together towards the back door, but the knocking immediately returned to the front door. Front to back, back to front, loud then quiet then loud again. Suddenly the sound was coming from both doors at once, big, heavy blows like a sledgehammer. Then something started rapping against all the windows in the house, then the walls. It was like we were all living inside of a drum with a dozen people trying to play at once, or we were a turtle and something was attempting to claw us out of our shell. "Stop!" Holden yelled. The knocking died. I won't tell, Holden said, staring at the door. I promise I won't tell anyone what I saw. Just please go away. We waited for nearly a minute. Then we heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Coming from the window Holden had looked through earlier. Holden started to cry, sobbing like a prisoner, watching gallows being built outside their cell. My dad held him, brushed his hair, but never lied to him, never told him things would be okay. The tapping at the window went on for the rest of the night. We huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. Eventually, my mom tried to take us kids into the room, while my dad stayed to watch the door. But the second we moved into my bedroom, the knocking came back, so loud it was possible to ignore. I was afraid the door couldn't take it. We went back to the living room and the knocking stopped. Only the tap, tap, tap on the window remained. None of us slept that night. The tapping stopped around 7 a.m. That's around the time the sun comes up here. We waited another 2 hours before my dad opened the blinds from one window. He made us all go back to my parents' bedroom first. I heard him open the door, then come back in. Okay, he told us. It's done. Holden's parents came back around lunchtime. My mom and dad walked Holden over to his house, and they all went inside for quite a while. Nola and I watched from the window. She stuck to me the whole day, right at my side, sometimes holding my hand. When my parents came back, they looked grim, but wouldn't tell us what they said to Holden's family. It was Sunday, so we all spent the day together, ordered pizza and watched movies. That night, everyone slept in my room. Nola and my mom in the bed with me, my dad in a chair he'd pulled over. There was no knocking that night or any night since. We didn't see much of Holden or his parents for the rest of that week, but by Thursday there was a moving truck in their driveway. Nola and I watched them packing up the whole afternoon after school. What sticks with me the most is how tired Holden and his parents looked. All three had the same pallor, grim mouths, and lightless eyes. Even from across the street, I could tell something was very wrong. Holden and his family were gone before sunset. I remember what the original welcoming committee said to my parents when we moved in. Not everyone who looks at the Whistler dies, but even those that live have the light go out of them, and the rest of their lives are full of misfortune. A million little tragedies. I think Holden's parents must have looked, either to comfort him if they didn't believe, or share the burden if they did. I watch Nola some days, happy and young, get alive, and I wonder if I'd been slower, if she'd look out the window that night. Would I have looked too? To comfort her? To share that burden? I'm glad I don't have to find out. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. We still hear our Whistler walking past every night. The blessings, the luck, the good things here are too good to leave. But we're careful. We don't have friends over to spend the night anymore. And my dad hides the key to the blinds very, very well. Not that I've gone looking. Some things you just don't need to look for. And that was written by Grand Theft Motto. So Grand _ Theft _ Motto. If anyone wants to check that out. And once again, the title of the story was, it's like there's a man who whistles outside our house. Something walks whistling past my house every night at 3:03. So, I hope you're all ready for this one. Get safe. Get protected. Because this, our final story that the ghosts of the tome have to tell us tonight, is titled, I Lost My Camera in the Woods. Hey world, my name is Noah. I wasn't going to tell anyone what happened to us those days we were out in the woods. We, being myself and my two close friends, Alicia and Alex. But whatever was out there, whatever is still out there, wants me to know that it knows I got out. That's because I left my camera out there. And today I received an email from an unknown sender with all the footage I recorded. I guess since it can send it to me, I can send it to anyone, and for the memories of my friends, this is why I need to tell all of you this. Alicia, Alex, if you're still out there, if you ever see or read this, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Day 1. First day of footage was pretty basic. Typical mid-20s teens going on a hike deep into the woods until it turned dark, setting up camp, so on and so forth. Noah, is that a camera? Why'd you bring that? Alicia chimes in as the camera wobbles to try and go into frame. You know, so we can show our kids or some shit. That disembodied voice was yours truly. I wanted to document our trip. I thought it'd be fun to look back on the memories. Sue me. Or it's evidence for the police when he murders us. A small thump is heard as the camera wobbles out of view and back into view, as Alex, the third in our trio, runs past with a shit-eating grin on his face. He had just smacked me in the back of the head as he ran by. Very funny, dude. I just thought it'd be nice. It's like a little video diary. You're right. You always did want to document everything. Alex was right. If there was any moment the three of us were together, there was bound to be a picture of it. I guess it was just something I was always fond of doing ever since my mom passed away. I was around 7, so the only photos I have of her were mostly holidays or family gatherings, since she was the one always taking photos of me growing up. Alex and Alicia both knew this about me, so although they might throw in an odd joke here or there, it's in good fun, and they never took it too far. After walking for a few seconds, you hear me chime in, laying out the scene. Trail mile 4, so that means we're about 4 miles in. We've been on the trail for about, 2-ish hours? It's about 11 a.m. and we have a long way to go. Screen cuts to black. Like I said, pretty basic. Nothing special on this one. Night 1. First, darkness, and then light as the camera slowly comes into focus. Turn that thing off! Alex yells. You're blinding me! Would you two keep it down over there? Alicia yells from her tent after letting out a soft giggle. I just had to document where we were after the hike today. You couldn't do that in the dark? How will we all know it's me? Because of your voice, he groans. He had a point, but still. The rest of Night 1's footage is me telling the camera how we made it about 8.5 more miles before the sun started to set. We set up camp, made dinner, and went to our respective tents. Alicia in one, Alex and I in the other, just to give her some privacy. Nothing was out of the ordinary, but did I hear some twigs snapping in the footage? Day 2. I started this recording around lunchtime. We started our hike about an hour after dawn. Our plan was to hike for 2 full days, camp out for another 2, and then hike back the last 2. We were making a nearly full week of this before we all flew back out to different states to finish our graduate's degrees. This was just an update. By this point, we were about 14 miles into the woods according to the trail markers. Night 2. This recording starts as we were setting up camp. You see me adjusting the camera that I've placed on a tripod, and once it's all settled, I walk back to helping Alicia and Alex set up camp. Hold on. Is that someone watching us? It's standing just outside the edge of our camp, and it's just standing there, barely moving apart from its slow, steady breaths, just watching us set up camp. From here, it looks like it's about 7, maybe 8 feet tall. It has horns. No, wait, antlers? That's about as much as I can make out because it's standing off near the trees where it's too dark for the camera to pick up in the quickly setting sun. That's fucking creepy, to say the least. Was it always watching us? Or was it... No, I don't even want to remotely think that this thing could have been following us. I'm guessing the footage here is about to end soon, since I know I did another recording later in the night from something waking me up. I'm guessing that's what follows. It's probably about another 10-ish seconds of us setting up camp. Then a jump cut to, yep, there it is. Us eating dinner around the campfire, and Jesus Christ! Something just ran in front of the camera. Maybe a small woodland creature, but oh God. That thing that was watching us, it's now peeking over the camera, like it's bending over to stare in. I can see its face clearly now, for the first time, its eyes glowing a faintish yellow, and I can now say with certainty that this thing did have antlers. But the creepiest part is, it had no flesh over its face. Just bone. Pure bone. and I can hear the wet, raspy breaths from what I can only assume is its mouth below the skull's jawline. It looks part deer, but also part wolf. I don't know how else to explain it. The way it stares into the camera almost gives me chills because it feels like it's staring at me as I watch it. It quickly disappears out of frame as you see me walk towards the camera. Another jump cut to me inside the tent with night vision on. Alex! Hey, dude, wake up! I whisper as you see me shake Alex. He groans. Seriously, dude, wake up. What? What is it? Do you hear that? You hear us both sit in silence for a few seconds as you can hear the faint sound of a zipper. Yo, Alicia, is that you? You need to take a leak or something? Suddenly, we hear the zipper quickly move and quick shuffling as it sounds like hooves running off. Must have been some deer or something. What? We hear her call from her tent. Nothing, just checking if you were up. Think some deer were nearby and we just spooked them, I call out. Oh, all right. We hear her softly mumble as her sleeping bag starts to shuffle. She must have been half asleep. The footage cuts to black there, and that was the end of night 2. Day 3. This footage starts off first thing in the morning. The only reason I recorded this is because somehow the outside of mine and Alex's tent was scratched, almost as if an animal with claws scratched the outside of it. We originally wrote it off as a bear or maybe a raccoon fell from a low-hanging tree, but with the previous night's footage, I'm not too sure anymore. Thankfully, it was only that outer covering, so rain doesn't pool or anything. We had an extra tarp, so we threw it over the tent and made a makeshift one. This footage is a bunch of jump cuts as you see us doing various things throughout the day. Nothing too exciting. It was tonight's footage that things started to become really, well, unexplainable. Night 3. A lot of shaking and rustling as I try to get the camera into focus. You can see that Alex wasn't in his sleeping bag and the door to the tent was wide open. Psst, Alex, you out there? Silence. I wait a few seconds before calling out again. Alex, you taking a piss? More silence. I didn't want to go above a whisper, but maybe he didn't hear me, I thought. Alex, you out there, dude? A little louder. You hear Alicia rustling next to me. I didn't want to wake her up if Alex was just going to the bathroom and I didn't realize. I wait a few more seconds in pure silence. I don't think I knew it that night, but I definitely do now as I'm watching it. The silence I'm talking about isn't your normal forest silence. It was pure, dead, silent. No crickets, no woodland critters running around, no occasional hoot of an owl or a howl of a distant wolf. I shit you not, there wasn't even the faint sound of a breeze from the wind brushing up against the leaves. If you dropped a pin, it would echo for miles for how quiet this was. Then Alex's whispers broke the silence. Yeah, man, but come look at the stars. I don't want to. I just want to sleep. Please, Noah. It would mean the world to me. I definitely didn't notice in my half-awake state, but it almost sounds like 2 voices whispering. Since when are you so fucking polite? You hear me chuckle. I'm always polite. Very funny. Now hurry up and get the fuck back in here. It's freezing. But look at all of them, Noah. The stars are shining bright tonight. Dude, you're acting weird. Just finish your piss and get back in here. Please, Noah, think of the memories. You hear me sigh as you see the camera start to rise up. Excuse me. And head towards the open door when... Noah, whatever you do, don't fucking leave the tent! You hear me? It's... All of a sudden, you hear Alex scream and a loud crack of something. And the screech, the most ear-splitting screech I've ever heard. And the sound of galloping hooves dragging something into the woods. I quickly run out of the tent with night vision on as I sweep the campsite. Behind me, you hear a zipper. What in the actual fuck was that? Where's Alex? It's Alicia. I don't know. The camera pans over to her. Based on the state of her appearance, she was clearly in a deep slumber. What do you mean you don't know, Noah? I woke up and he was outside of the tent and he yelled for me. I heard that screech and then something was running away while dragging something else. So I ran out here to check and I don't see Alex anywhere on camera. You see Alicia go into her tent and come back out quickly with a flashlight. Smart thinking, I say as I go to get my own. The footage continues with us sweeping the camp and yelling out for Alex. I had managed to place the camera facing out towards us with the night vision on. I made sure when I placed it down, I put it at an angle so you could see the entrances to both our tents as well. Oh shit! That thing from the night before is going into Alicia's tent. This is the first good look I've gotten of it besides the head in the earlier footage. Like before, the weird wolf deer skull with glowing yellow eyes and antlers. But then its body is mostly covered in fur, with its legs ending in hooves. You'd think the arms would have been the same, but it almost makes me sick to even describe it, and you probably won't believe me. But about halfway down its arms, it was flesh. Human flesh. And at the end were two very human-like hands. Although the fingers had to be twice, if not 3 times as long, it seems to be searching for something. What, I don't know. It leaves the tent, and it has something in its hands. And then it enters my tent. Great, as if I couldn't sleep before. Now a weird wolf-deer hybrid. A weir? A dolph? Sorry, it doesn't matter. After a few seconds, you see it leave my tent. I pause here for a second. Fuck. It has our wallets and cell phones. That's where they went and why we couldn't call for help. It's intelligent. It knew to do this. Does this mean it has done this before? That it knows what it's doing? Was it hunting us? Needless to say, Alicia and I were both freaked the fuck out, and so we decided that for this night we'd stay in the same tent. I think we both felt safer that way. Maybe it was just for protection, or maybe it was for each other's sanities, but we bundled up together and just stayed huddled. The camera stayed on all night, focused on us. Neither of us slept. I noticed now, as if out of nowhere, there's sounds of the forest again. You see us jump at every rustle, every hoot, and every twig that snaps. We were worried that whatever made that screeching noise and made Alex scream was still out there. We still hadn't seen it yet, and we both knew that we definitely didn't want to. We just didn't want to be alone for the rest of the night. Day 4. The second the first light of sunlight appeared, we packed up one tent and gathered all of my belongings from the tent I was sharing with Alex. We originally tried to find our phones and wallets, but we also couldn't remember if we had left them at the car or not, since what use would they be out here in the middle of the wilderness? Well, now I know we did have them, and what happened to them. We spent about an hour combing the woods around the campsite for signs of Alex calling out his name. All we found was one of his shoes and part of his shirt. Alicia and I both agreed that we weren't staying another night in that campsite. We kept mine and Alex's tent up with his things still in it. I think part of us did that because there was hope that whatever we heard the night before wasn't Alex being killed by an animal, and it was him playing a weird and very cruel trick on us. Another part of it was foolishness, knowing that Alex probably would have been able to outrun or at least try to stay away from an animal, and we just didn't want to believe that Alex could have been hurt. I wish now that I told Alicia what I heard Alex yell before I heard that snapping sound. I also didn't tell Alicia what I saw that the camera didn't. I swear that faintly in the shadows, I watched Alex get picked up and watched this 7-foot creature snap him like a twig. But I also didn't want to believe that either. So let's just go with Alicia and I were swaying on the side of hope. Night 4. Night 4's footage is different than the rest. The only reason I know this is because I didn't film anything else past day 4. The footage starts with me in my sleeping bag, somewhere in the middle of the woods. The camera falls and you see that I'm asleep, and the creature from the night before slowly starts to move towards me. At this point, the footage starts to distort, so you see nothing for a little bit. But I know exactly what happened in this lost footage. I know because it was around this time that I woke up. I opened my eyes and instantly I knew I wasn't in my tent. I quickly shut my eyes tighter than I've ever shut them. One reason I thought I was dreaming. The other reason, I could hear it. I couldn't see it, it was too dark, but I could hear it skulking in the shadows, moving around on its fleshy hands and clunky hooves. The breathing was low, guttural, almost like an animal that hadn't eaten in months, years even. And then add some beast you might see in a movie or on TV. It sounded like a creature that needed flesh, and no matter how much it fed on that flesh, it only wanted more. I could hear it slowly coming closer, as if it could sense the change in my heartbeat, my breathing, my everything. It was right next to me. I could feel its hot, damp breath on my skin. And then, well, look who's awake, my sweet boy. No, it was impossible. It was my mother's voice. How did this thing know her voice? Noah, honey, it's me. It's Mommy. I clenched my eyes tighter, hoping, praying even, that it was a dream. Noah, look at Mommy, sweetie. It's going to be okay. My mom's sweet, soothing voice overlapped with that guttural, raspy whisper, like Alex's from the night before, was playing tricks on my mind. The half that was my mother's sounded distressed, which made my instincts want to kick in and save her. But the other half, the creature's half, made me know that this wasn't her, and it was overlapping her sweet, soothing coo. Please look at me, love. It's the only way to help me, Noah. You have to look at me. You have to look at the stars. Suddenly, I felt a heavy hand on my chest, as I felt the creature's warm breath on my face, in a voice that was no longer my mother's, but a monster with pure hatred. Look at me, Noah! Look into my eyes! It was now inches from my face, its spittle dripping onto various parts of my head. I'm sure the creature could feel me quivering under its hand that was slowly pressing into my chest. Look at me now, human, or I'll crush the air out of your pathetic lungs. Its warm breath was now barely touching my nose, nauseating me with its mixture of decay and musk. Noah? Noah, where are you? Noah! Oh God, it was Alicia. I could feel the pressure slowly start to release from my chest, as I could tell the beast got the beast's attention. That Alicia got the beast's attention. She'll do. As it laughed again, I could breathe again, and the footage picks back up as you see the shadowed hoof of the creature run out of frame. You can hear its hastening gallop as it quickly made its way towards my other friend. I swear I can just make out Alicia saying, "What the fuck is that?" as her blood-curdling scream pierces the night air. And now I'm ashamed to say what I did next, but it's the reason I feel the need to write this, because it's right here on the footage that you see me swiftly rip out of my sleeping bag and run. And I ran, and I ran, and I kept running until I could see streetlights. I never looked back. I never turned around. It took a few hours, and no matter how many times I swore I heard Alex, Alicia, my mother calling out for me, I didn't look back. I just ran. Day 5, onward. There's more footage, and this footage, it's of me, walking along the interstate the woods running along. That fucking creature was filming me. It knew that I was out there, and it knew I left my friends behind. I think it filmed me walking along the highway, alone, so it could include it in this email. How it emailed me, I still don't even know. Maybe it can tap into satellites or emails or whatever. That doesn't matter. It got to me. But it wanted me to know that it knew I made it out alive. Maybe it wanted me to feel shame or grief. I don't know, but it worked. The footage continues until you see me collapse from exhaustion, and shortly after, a trucker driving by sees me on the side of the road. You see him jump out, realize I'm alive, and he phones for emergency services. The footage from this day ends there, and I remember waking up a few hours later in a hospital bed. Most of my memory from the last 12 hours or so have been pretty foggy, and the police and numerous detectives would question me over and over throughout the coming days. Between my dad and his company's money, I was able to get a good enough lawyer to keep the law from locking me away for the disappearance of my 2 friends. The police, the town, even most of the internet thinks I did it. Shit. If I was reading the story online, I'd think I was guilty too. 3 friends go into the woods. 1 comes out covered in scratches, bruises, bloodied, and doesn't remember much of what happened. Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess my story ends here. Wait, there's another video? That's impossible. It's simply labeled night, ? I click it open and immediately I'm thinking, holy shit, it's my bedroom. The camera is in a corner on the tripod I had with me in the woods. I'm not sure how it got set up, but you can see me in bed. My computer across from me and my bedroom window is in between. Suddenly you can see 2 fleshy hands slowly open my window, my very much shut window. The creature from the woods slowly crawls in and worms its way across my floor. It slowly stands, all 7 feet of him, over my body, and then the camera goes black. And that's the end of the footage in the email. I'm not sure where it came from, like I said, but clearly this creature knows where I live. I mean, shit, it knew my goddamn mother's voice. Has it always been following me? No, that's insane. This creature was deep in the woods. Woods that are maybe an hour away at most from where I live. Maybe it can read our minds or know our feelings. Who knows? But it's out there. And it's still feeding on anyone who might go into its home. Unless it doesn't have a home. Maybe it goes wherever it damn well pleases. All I know is if you're reading this, look into my eyes. And that story was a little different than the others. Mainly because that story was written by Tony Marinara, yours truly. So I hope you enjoyed it. That was called I Lost My Camera in the Woods. And that is the first story I've ever read for anyone or shown to the public. So, I hope you enjoyed it. There may be more. We'll see in the coming days or weeks. I decided to put that in the Saucius Necronomicus myself. It obviously wasn't in there originally. If you weren't here at the beginning of the stream, this appeared on my, I was looking in the dark web for this, for a real copy, when there was a buzzer at my door earlier this evening. And this was bundled up with a note that said, be careful what you wish for. So it's not the real thing, but someone printed it off and made the binder for me. So yeah. So before I send you off, I need to obviously protect you guys and read the closing spell, or the protection spell. All ghosts that have entered this home on this evening will now return to thine final resting place. All evil you try to send the witnesses tonight's way, upon your own self thou will find it returned. All actions, thoughts, and plans of hate become your own decided fate. By all that is above and all that is below, by oceans wide and land so vast, by day and by night and powers that be, this is my will and so it shall be. Bring harm to none and none to me. Ghosts of unrest, return to this saucy tome and rest easy once more. And that ends our saucy tales for tonight from the Saucius Necronomicus. But thank you guys so much for tonight. I hope you all enjoyed the saucy tales. And until next time, which we will be back next Saturday with more saucy tales from the Saucius Necronomicus. I'm your host, Tony Marinara. And let's go get ready to give Slightly Foxtail some love.